Sarada was a hopeless fool who gets sent to a dorm for misfits after breaking school rules. However, when he is forced to take care of the new girl in the dorm, he slowly falls for her and tries to riz her up. While Sarada was fixing the dorm sign one morning, two girls were gossiping about their notorious dorm for weirdos, and this reminded Sarada that he had to leave the place as soon as possible. Later at school, Sarada went to the staff room to see Chihiro, their 40-years-old virgin dorm master. The woman gave him a photo of her younger cousin Mashiro and told him to go to the train station to pick her up. When he complained that he wasn't an Uber, she just patted his head to shut him up. So after school, Sarada went to the station, and while waiting, he noticed a beautiful girl sitting under a cherry blossom tree. Unable to help himself, he kept staring at her until he realized she was the girl he was supposed to pick up. He was shocked that she looked way older than her picture, and then he introduced himself and informed her that Chihiro sent him to pick her up. When they arrived at the dorm later, the overly eccentric Misaki welcomed Mashiro with a mini feast. Also in attendance was Jin, the dorm's certified playboy, and the only housemate absent was the shut-in geek Ryunosuke. And as they ate, Chihiro informed them that Mashiro was transferring to their school as an art student. Misaki and Jin then started bugging her, so Sarada scolded them to leave her alone. The following day, when Sarada was about to leave for school, Chihiro put him in charge of Mashiro, so he went up to her room to wake her. When Mashiro didn't respond to his knocks, he entered the room and was shocked to find clothes everywhere. As he wondered what had happened, he spotted Mashiro's computer and saw that she was working on a manga. While he was looking at it, he noticed something moving under the table and realized it was Mashiro sleeping under piles of clothes. He then woke her up and asked her to get ready for school. As she crawled out from under the table, Sarada was shocked because she was set to skin-only mode. He immediately turned away out of courtesy and begged her to put some clothes on. However, she only wore a shirt halfway and was ready to step out without pants until he helped her pick her entire outfit. Afterward, he also asked her to wash her face and fix her hair while he sat down, wondering why she couldn't do basic things herself. However, when she stepped out of the bathroom with a soaked shirt, he wondered if what they said about blondes was true. He then cleaned up the mess she had made while she changed clothes, and once they were both finished, he grabbed her and ran to school. That evening, Sarada called an emergency meeting to discuss Mashiro's care and ended up being put in charge of her permanently. The following morning, while Sarada was speaking to Misaki about not liking his new position, Mashiro showed up wearing only a shirt. Shocked, Sarada questioned her choice of dressing, and she told him that Misaki had said he liked it when girls went commando. Misaki was proud that Mashiro had taken her advice, but Sarada told her to stop spreading her degenerate ideals. Later on, they stopped by the convenience store, and just as Sarada realized that he was broke, he noticed that Mashiro was already eating a bun. Just as he began scolding her, he spotted his friend Oyama, who was getting off her shift, and called out to her. On their way to school, Sarada officially introduced Mashiro and Oyama to each other. However, Mashiro told Oyama that Sarada was the first boy she'd been with, causing the girl to assume they had done the horizontal tango. During lunch break, his other friend, Miyahara, showed him the magazine issue featuring an interview with Jin and Misaki for the anime they did together, reminding Sarada that he was talentless. Just then, Mashiro came looking for him to tell him that she would go home alone after school, so he asked her to be careful. As soon as she left, Miyahara descended on Sarada, wanting to know what his relationship with the A-class baddie was. Sarada assured him that there was nothing between them, and when he broke free of Miyahara's hold, he noticed Oyama giving him an ugly stare. After school, Mashiro left school with a woman named Ayano, and on her way home later, she dropped by Oyama's workplace to clear things up with her. Later, while Sarada was in his room, Mashiro walked in and asked him to undress. It took Sarada a few seconds to overcome the shock, but once he did, he refused to do what she asked. Mashiro then explained that because she was struggling to draw the male body, her editor, Ayano, had advised her to find a muse before the deadline for the manga competition she had entered. Hearing this, Sarada agreed to help and took off his clothes. However, when he started getting excited as Mashiro felt him up, he regretted this decision. It only got worse when she hugged him, but before he could make a mess, she got off him and started drawing. When he tried to put his clothes back in, she told him not to, as they were gonna pull an all-nighter. The following morning, Sarada ran into Oyama when he took out the trash, and she assured him that she was no longer mad at him. Their conversation soon shifted to Mashiro, and he said that her dedication to perfecting her manga reminded him of Oyama's drive to become a voice actor. Hearing him say this made Oyama shy, so she made up an excuse to rush off. When he returned inside, he noticed an art book on the table, and while admiring the picture, Mashiro suddenly showed up and told him she'd drawn it. As he stared at her in surprise, Jin, who had just walked in, asked him to look at the book's cover, which he did, and was surprised to see Mashiro's name. Out of curiosity, he went upstairs to look up Mashiro on the web, and was shocked to discover that she was a world-famous painter. That evening, as Sarada walked to his bedroom after taking a bath, he overheard Jin talking on the phone with an editor who believed he had a better script for Misaki's next anime. When Jin hung up the phone, Sarada approached him and admitted that after discovering who Mashiro was, he couldn't help but feel insignificant. After all, he didn't have exceptional talent or skill, and was just Chihiro's errand boy who collected cats like Pokemon cards. Jin then surprised him by offering to look after his cats and Mashiro so that he could move out of Sakura-su, but Sarada remained quiet. Seeing this, Jin told him that if he didn't man up and take control of his life, he'd only end up a pathetic, deadbeat loser. Annoyed, Sarada swore that he would prove Jin wrong, and as he stormed off to his room, he bumped into Chihiro, but refused to acknowledge her. Once he was in his room, he sent Ryunosuke an email asking for help becoming a game programmer, but backed out mid-conversation. The next day at school, he began putting up posters for a caretaker, and so Oyama offered to help him. A few moments later, she returned with Mashiro, who asked him to go out with her that weekend, but he refused and told her to invite Jin instead. After Mashiro walked away, Oyama asked Sarada whether it was wise to leave Mashiro alone with a woman charmer like Jin, and Sarada told her he didn't care. When the weekend came, a frantic Misaki informed Sarada that Jin was taking Mashiro to a love motel. Chihiro told them to stop making a fuss, adding that it was probably research for Mashiro's manga, but Sarada said to her that trusting Jin with a girl was like trusting Luffy to guard the kitchen. Following this, he and Misaki tracked Mashiro's phone to the mall with Ryunosuke's help and began tailing them like a low-budget Sherlock and Watson. When Misaki tried to go and confront them, Sarada slammed her into a pillar to stop her. Just then, Oyama, who was on her work break, spotted them. They quickly pulled her to hide with them, and when she realized what they were doing, she made up an excuse to leave. Once they were alone again, Misaki let her feelings out and admitted she liked Jin. Later, they followed Jin and Mashiro to the love motel, but Misaki left because she couldn't handle seeing them together. On the other hand, Sarada decided to defend Mashiro's honor and tried to punch Jin, but got punched instead and passed out. When he woke up later, he was in one of the rooms with Mashiro, who informed him that Jin had left. She then began undressing to take a shower, and Sarada started panicking. He also scolded her for coming to a love motel with a guy, but Mashiro said she'd only come because she was doing research for her manga. When she asked why he was there, Sarada didn't know how to respond and just kept staring at her like an idiot. Later, while she was asleep, Sarada called Jin and tried to talk to him about Misaki, but Jin admitted he wasn't ready to face her. The conversation then shifted to Mashiro, and Sarada admitted that seeing how focused she was on her manga made him realize how much he was lacking. He said he would take control of his life and make it better instead of complaining about how much it sucked. The following morning, he took the first step by informing Mashiro about his plans to leave Sakura-su, but promised that he would keep taking care of her until then. Days later, after Sarada finished packing up his stuff, he briefly recalled how Mashiro had thrown herself into finishing her manga after he told her he was moving out. Later in the day, Misaki came to the hallway to show off Mashiro to Sarada because she was dressed in a kimono. However, instead of complimenting Mashiro, the idiot asked why she was dressed like that. Unable to stand his stupidity, Misaki ran off dramatically, so Mashiro followed her after calling him a dimwit. As he tried to figure out his mistake, Jin approached him and said his lack of game was the reason he would be single for life. He then handed him a yukata, which Misaki had prepared, and explained that she wanted them to celebrate Tanabata. Unfortunately, the celebration was disrupted by a sudden downpour that evening. While Sarada was drying Mashiro's hair, she got a call from Ayano. After she hung up, she announced that her entry to the manga competition had been rejected. Sarada immediately tried to make her feel better about her first loss, but he ended up saying all the wrong things, so she left. Realizing his mistake, he rushed out of the dorm and went to sit in the park in the pouring rain to reflect on it. Jin later found him with an umbrella, and as they talked, he admitted he'd felt a little relieved when he heard what Mashiro said. Jin didn't judge him for this because he also harbored jealousy towards Misaki, whose new anime had been well received. Instead, he told Sarada that it was normal for people like them to feel inferior around talented people like Misaki and Mashiro. When they returned to the dorm, Sarada found some programming books outside his bedroom door. He later learned they were from Ryunosuke, who claimed he no longer needed them. The following day after school, Ayano pulled up like Dominique Toretto to pick Sarada up and take him to a cafe. There, she showed him Mashiro's manuscript and told him it had been rejected because of its ending. As Sarada flipped through it, he realized that she had written about them. But in her story, she was the one leaving Sakura-su. Ayano further explained that she had asked Mashiro to change the ending, but she refused, insisting it was what Sarada wanted. Hearing this, Sarada rushed back to the dorm to Mashiro's room, and as he stood outside the door, he poured out his heart. However, Mashiro didn't respond, so he went into the room and found her asleep at her computer. When he went closer, he saw that she changed the ending to her manga, and this time, none of them left the dorm. At that moment, Ayano called Mashiro, so Sarada answered the phone. She told him that if Mashiro changed the manga's ending, it would be published. When he said Mashiro, she started crying but admitted she didn't know why. Sarada then comforted her, and just as he told her that he would celebrate her debut, Jin and Misaki barged in. Taking advantage of them being there, Sarada announced that he would remain at the dorm and apologized for all the fuss he'd made about leaving. In response, Misaki popped a confetti to celebrate his staying, and after they hung out with Mashiro a little longer, they all went down for dinner. Weeks later, Sarada went through Mashiro's test scores and discovered that she was the definition of beauty without brains.
Only language you speak is failure.
When Jin walked into the room, he begged him to help him tutor Mashiro for her makeup exam. He was still talking when he noticed Mashiro trying to work on her manga storyboard, so he snatched it away from her. As he began telling her how serious the situation was, Misaki, the female Tarzan, swung into the room through the window. She then asked what they were all doing, and after Sarada explained the situation, she suggested that Mashiro memorize the past questions. Sarada didn't think Mashiro could do it, but she shocked him thanks to her photographic memory. That evening, while the girls played video games, Sarada and Jin sat at the dinner table talking, and Sarada told Jin he was entering a game design competition. However, before he could go into details, Misaki came and dragged him away to play a round against her. The following day, Sarada took Mashiro to school to take her exams, and while he waited for her in another classroom, Aoyama walked in. They then exchanged pleasantries and talked about their reasons for being at school during the summer break. However, the conversation was cut off when Aoyama's stomach growled, so Sarada offered her a bun. The moment she took it, her alarm went off, so she told Sarada that she had to get to work. Soon after she left, Mashiro walked up to Sarada and showed him that she'd aced her exams. This caused him to fall to his knees in lament because never in a million years would his outdated brain work like that. On their way back to the dorm, they walked past Aoyama's workplace, and when they saw that she was about to faint, Sarada rushed to her side. They then took her to a nearby park, where Aoyama tried to convince Sarada that she was fine, but he argued that she wasn't. When he advised her to take a break from working, Aoyama told him that she couldn't and revealed that her father had cut her off for wanting to become a voice actor. Her lack of funds meant that she couldn't pay her rent anymore, so Sarada suggested that she move into Sakura-su since it was much cheaper. Days later, she moved into Sakura-su, and after an eventful welcome by Misaki, she learned about Mashiro and Sarada's arrangement. She immediately voiced her disagreement and said he would take over. However, she soon realized that Mashiro was a lot to handle. As the days passed, she finally got the hang of things, and Sarada used the free time to work on his game proposal. One night, Mashiro suddenly entered his room and climbed into bed with him, but Sarada panicked for obvious reasons and moved to the floor. From there, he asked when the first issue of her manga would be published, and after she told him, he asked if she'd like to buy it together. When he began talking about how excited she must be about her debut, he realized that she had fallen asleep, so he went down to the kitchen. Surprisingly, he found Aoyama fast asleep at the dinner table, and when he attempted to wake her, she punched him in the face. When she realized what she'd done, she apologized and explained that she'd fallen asleep while practicing for her upcoming recital. Just then, she remembered she was on cleaning duty, but Sarada told her to forget about it and go to bed. For some reason, this annoyed Aoyama, so she lashed out and they both started arguing. When she tried to leave, she bumped into Jin, who annoyed her even more by testing out his lines on her, so she kicked both him and Sarada out. The following day, after Aoyama returned from her recital practice, she made dinner and went to get the others. However, she found Mashiro fast asleep, so she brought up her plate and took the shirt hanging from the back of the chair to fix it. While she was doing that, Mashiro came downstairs, so Aoyama asked her to put out her laundry. However, Mashiro noticed she looked tired. Meanwhile, in Jin's room, Sarada expressed his worry about how Aoyama was taking on too many things at once. Jin explained that it was because she wasn't used to having a support system, but assured him that she would change eventually. When Sarada got up to leave, he accidentally kicked an Osaka University practice book, so he asked Jin why he had it. Jin explained that he wanted to attend an art school in Osaka and asked Sarada not to mention it to Misaki yet. A few days later, while Sarada was working on his proposal, Mashiro came to tell him that Aoyama was acting strangely. When he went to check on her, he saw that she had fallen by the door and rushed to her side. This drew the others' attention, and when Sarada realized that Aoyama was sick, he put her to bed and went to talk to the others. They were all worried about her, but agreed it wouldn't be wise to let her attend her recital in her condition. Mashiro was the only one who felt that Aoyama shouldn't miss the recital, so she pleaded with them and got them to change their minds. However, when they tried to leave the dorm, Chihiro appeared, and as soon as she learned that Aoyama was sick, she forbade them from leaving. Of course, they didn't listen, and while Mashiro and Sarada took Aoyama to the waiting taxi, Jin held Chihiro back to prevent her from going after them. A few minutes later, they arrived at the venue, and after Aoyama went inside, Mashiro and Sarada waited outside until it started raining. They immediately sought shelter in a convenience store, and while there, Sarada saw that the magazine featuring Mashiro's manga was on sale. When he showed it to her, the girl didn't glance at it because she was too busy worrying about Aoyama. An hour or so later, Aoyama's recital was over, but when she came out, Sarada and Mashiro overheard a girl blaming her for their group's failure. After the girl ran off, Sarada approached Aoyama, who broke down and began blaming herself like the girl had done. Sarada told her that she'd done her best and advised her not to let one failure make her doubt herself, so she clung to him as she cried her heart out. The following morning, when Aoyama woke up, she was surprised to see Mashiro sleeping by her bedside. However, when Sarada came up with her breakfast, he found Aoyama talking to her stuffed tiger, and she became embarrassed. After teasing her a bit, he fed her the chicken soup he'd brought and told her it was Mashiro who'd begged them to let her go to the recital. He was still speaking when Mashiro woke up, so Aoyama thanked her for speaking up for her and for looking after her throughout the night. She also said she was resigning from taking care of her because it was too much to handle. Mashiro didn't mind and soon fell asleep again. A few days later, Yuko, Sarada's younger sister, suddenly showed up at the dorm and was unfortunate enough to witness Mashiro slide into Mashiro after slipping on a banana peel. A little while later, after he'd gotten Mashiro dressed, Sarada called his parents to find out why Yuko was there. His mother told him it was because she'd convinced Yuko that he was too busy playing house with baddies and didn't want to return home. After his mother hung up, Yuko and Mashiro approached him to ask who the other person was. He introduced Yuko to Mashiro as his younger sister, but before he could introduce Mashiro to Yuko, the girl told Yuko that she belonged to Sarada. Yuko immediately assumed that they were into that whole 50 Shades of Grey thing, and Sarada nearly lost it. Moments later, Aoyama returned from work and came looking for Sarada, but was greeted by the sight of Yuko clinging to him. Realizing that she was about to misunderstand the situation, Sarada quickly explained that Yuko was his sister. On the other hand, Yuko was convinced that Aoyama was another one of Sarada's women and began trying to drag him back home. When they stepped into the hallway, they were surprised to find it flooded, and that was when Mashiro told Sarada the bath had broken a little while ago. That night during dinner, Sarada noticed that Yuko had a grain of rice on her cheek, so he removed it and ate it. Mashiro happened to witness this and tried to recreate it, but Aoyama paid attention to her, not Sarada, as she hoped. Eventually, Jin got up, saying he was going to take a shower, but Sarada informed him that the bathroom was out of commission. In the end, they all went to a bathhouse, and while there, Sarada and Jin overheard Yuko gushing about Mashiro's surprisingly large plots. Jin then decided to mess with Sarada and loudly asked which girl he was thinking about. Hearing this, Aoyama called out to Sarada, warning him not to keep any mental image for his sock session later. This prompted Yuko to accuse Aoyama of trying to seduce her brother, but Aoyama denied it. Yuko then began complaining that she was the only one built like a runway, but Jin assured her that one day she'd become a melon ambassador, which made her happy. Days later, when Sarada walked into his room and found that the girls had turned it into a lounge, he asked Yuko when she planned to return home. She told him she wasn't ready yet and asked him to take her out so she could explore the city. Hearing this, Mashiro and Aoyama tagged along, but Yuko spent most of the time trying and failing to prove to Mashiro that she was Sarada's favorite. Eventually, they went to the temple to offer prayers, and on their way down the stairs, Aoyama tripped. Fortunately, Sarada caught her, causing a brief awkward moment before the two jumped apart. When Sarada tried to apologize, Aoyama cut him off and pointed out that Thing 1 and Thing 2 were missing. After searching for them for a few hours, Sarada found them, and after paying an angry vendor for the candy apple Mashiro took from him, they returned to the dorm. The following day, when they dropped Yuko off at the train station, she told Sarada that she would apply to their school. Later that week, Sarada got 2 letters, one from the game design coordinators informing him that he was to give a presentation on the 31st, and the second, from an unknown individual, asked him to teach them about love, as he sat in his room, trying to figure out who had sent the second letter. Mashiro walked in and asked him the same question that the letter had asked. Realizing that she was the letter's sender, he wondered why she was suddenly interested in Cupid's business. Mashiro explained that Ayano had told her she couldn't write about love unless she understood it, so she was hoping he could help her. She also mentioned that there would be a meeting on the 31st to pick out her new serialization. Since it was also the day of Sarada's presentation, he told her that he couldn't help her, so she offered to assist him with his presentation instead. Just as he assured her that he could do it on his own, Aoyama walked in and scolded Mashiro for being in Sarada's room without pants. Mashiro didn't see what was wrong with it, so Aoyama told her that the virgin losers like Sarada usually got too excited at the sight of exposed skin. She then tried to pull Mashiro out of the room, but she refused, saying she still hadn't learned about love. Of course, Aoyama assumed it was the dirty kind of love, but Sarada quickly explained it was the one involving the heart. Still, Aoyama insisted that Mashiro leave the room, as her presence was a distraction. Sarada assured her that it wasn't, but he was suddenly cut off when that wannabe Spider-Man named Misaki came into the room through the window again. After she crashed into Sarada, he kicked all 3 girls out and then sent Ryunosuke a message asking for advice on his presentation. Ryunosuke just told him to practice in front of the others, so that was what he did. For the next few days, he worked on his presentation non-stop, and also did more mock presentations. When the day of the presentation finally arrived, Mashiro gave him a lucky charm, which she'd bought the day before, so he thanked her and left. However, when he arrived at the venue, he was a bag of nerves and ended up stuttering like a fool each time he was asked a question. This led to his pitch being rejected, so he returned to the dorm a sad boy and sat outside crying until Mashiro found him. He assured her that he was fine, and when he learned that her new manga was going to be serialized, he felt even worse than before. Unknown to him, Aoyama had overheard his conversation with Mashiro and knew he'd failed. So when he went up to his room, she went to inform Jin and Misaki about it. The two then decided that he needed some cheering up. So Misaki barged into Sarada's room with a box full of swimsuits because their chosen activity was swimming. When Jin and Aoyama arrived, Jin asked Aoyama to pick out a swimsuit for herself. The girl was reluctant because she didn't think a swimming party was what Sarada needed. However, he told her he didn't mind, so she gave in. Since it was late at night and all the pools were closed, they snuck into the school's swimming pool. After playing around for a while, they took a break to eat some hot pot, but never got to it because a security guard showed up. They managed to give the man the slip, and as they ran home, fireworks exploded in the sky. Sarada then told Aoyama that he would submit another proposal because he wasn't a quitter. The following week, Sarada awoke to find that Misaki and Mashiro had graffitied his entire room with characters from an anime Misaki had been working on. When he told them to get out so he could get ready for school, Misaki revealed that she'd taken out the batteries from his alarm clock, so he screamed in frustration. That night, during dinner, an unexpected guest named Rita dropped by the dorm to see Mashiro and told her she had come to take her back to England. She said Mashiro's future lay in painting, not manga, but Mashiro disagreed. When she kept insisting that Mashiro return with her, Mashiro kicked her out of the dorm, but Sarada brought her back inside so she wouldn't freeze to death. However, while she was taking a bath, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd made the right choice, seeing as Mashiro didn't want her there. Just then, she returned wearing a towel, so to prevent his rod from going hot, he shoved Mashiro's shirt into her hands. Once she was dressed, she looked around the room and confidently stated that Mashiro had drawn half of the drawings on his wall. Sarada was surprised that she could tell just by looking, so she explained that she was very familiar with Mashiro's art style because they studied art together. However, while Mashiro went on to become the Picasso of their generation, she quit painting for personal reasons. Out of curiosity, Sarada asked how Mashiro had been in England, and Rita told him that Mashiro was an overwhelming person. She warned that if he remained at Mashiro's side, he would end up broken, just as she had. Her words left Sarada feeling some way, so he spent the night thinking about them and Mashiro before falling asleep. When he woke up the following morning, he found Rita on top of him, and before he could get her off, Aoyama walked into the room. She immediately assumed he was doing cultured things and refused to listen when he tried to explain what happened. Their voices soon attracted the others, and as they all voiced their opinions about the situation, Ryunosuke came out of his room to tell them to shut up. They were all surprised to see him, and since Mashiro and Sarada had never seen him before, he did a formal introduction. Even in class, everyone looked at him like he was an alien, but he didn't care and kept doing what he was doing. When the teacher began complaining about Ryuna's lack of focus, Aoyama wrote down a message, asking Sarada if he was okay with Mashiro leaving. Sarada didn't respond, but the question kept bugging him for the rest of the day. After school, he ran into Mashiro in the dorm, but the girl wouldn't talk to him and called him a stupid idiot, as she believed he agreed with Rita's plan to take her back. To rectify the situation, he sent her a message the next day, explaining that he was on her side, not Rita's, and she believed him. That evening after school, an excited Misaki proposed that they band together to do something for the school festival. After much deliberation, they decided to put on a spectacular show, and Sarada was appointed director. Later that week, as they continued working on their show, Ryunosuke caught Rita watching Sarada and told her that it was time she packed her bags and left. It was apparent he disliked her, so he assured her that things wouldn't go the way she wanted them to. Rita told him not to say things he wasn't sure about, but Ryunosuke shocked her by saying he'd already figured out what her deal was. The following day, the group met on the roof for lunch and to discuss the progress of their work. Jin informed them that they had run into a problem. The school required them to give a presentation before they would be allowed to put on the show. If they failed to convince everyone in charge, they wouldn't be allowed to put on the show. Just as he told Sarada that he would make the presentation as the director, Ryunosuke informed the group that he'd also run into a little problem. This problem involved the art sequence, and he felt that if they didn't up their game, they wouldn't finish production on time. Mashiro promised to double her efforts, but Ryunosuke pointed out that she was already working overtime. Misaki offered to help, but he told her she still had her own part to complete. Hearing this, Sarada began blaming himself, but they asked him not to do that, as he was already doing his best like the rest of them. On their way back to class, they ran into Tadabayashi, the student council president, and his girlfriend Sori. Tadabayashi and Jin seemed to have a bit of beef, and Jin asked the president why he was making their group give a presentation. Tadabayashi claimed it was because he wanted to uphold the uniqueness of their school's festival, and advised Jin not to start making nonsense assumptions. After Tadabayashi and Sori left, the group asked Jin what his deal was with Tadabayashi, and he said they didn't mix because they were like oil and water. That night, as Sarada, Mashiro, Ryunosuke, and Aoyama walked to their dorm, Sarada told them they needed to find someone to help Mashiro with the art. Mashiro suggested Rita as a possible candidate, but Sarada didn't think Rita would agree. Just then, Rita happened to show up, so they went to ask her about it, and just like Sarada predicted, she said no. Mashiro couldn't understand why, so she reminded Rita of how much she loved painting. When she began complimenting her skills, Rita got pissed and told her she was the last person she wanted to hear those words from. It turned out that Rita harbored hatred towards Mashiro because, while they were learning art under her grandfather, Mashiro excelled more than she did, so she quit. The only reason she'd encouraged Mashiro to become a manga artist in the first place was that she was hoping that she'd fail. After hearing what she said, Ryunosuke told her that if she channeled all the energy she was using to be a first-class hater into something else, she would succeed. Rita tried to clap back, but Ryunosuke had mastered the art of dissing, so in the end, she became overwhelmed and ran away. Sarada and the girls immediately went after her, and when they found her sitting in a park, Sarada went to speak with her. He imparted some of Master Uguay's wisdom on her and managed to convince her to speak to Mashiro. During her talk with Mashiro, she apologized for all the mean things she said and promised she was done being salty over the fact that her talent was mid. The conversation ended with them hugging and Mashiro telling her that she still wanted to be her friend, even though she had the potential to be a Karen. In the days that followed, Rita joined the group to work on the show and get ready for the presentation. When the day finally came, Sarada gave the presentation and received the higher-ups' approval. While they were celebrating their success that evening, Rita teased Ryunosuke, causing him to run back to the safety of his room. She then told Sarada that she still hadn't changed her mind about taking Mashiro back, but promised not to bring it up again until after the festival. When the festival week finally arrived, they continued working on the show, and one evening, Sarada overheard Rita speaking on the phone. She told the person on the other end that her flight to England would depart on the last night of the cultural festival. From the way she spoke, it sounded like she was taking Mashiro with her. When Sarada tried to walk away, the old house gave him away, so Rita ended the call immediately and told him that Mashiro would definitely return to where she belonged. On the way to school the next day, Sarada tried to ask Mashiro about what Rita said, but he was interrupted by her friend. When he went to the prep room later that day, he was shocked to find Ryunosuke dressed as a maid. It had been forced on him by Aoyama, and the only reason he came to school was because Rita had taken over his room and refused to leave. He then began working on their show and told Sarada that he felt the final scene lacked something. Sarada agreed with him, but said he didn't know what to do to make it better, so Ryunosal suggested he attend a seminar by a game developer named Kazuki for inspiration. Taking his advice, Sarada went to the seminar, but it just left him feeling even more confused as he stood outside trying to gather his thoughts. Mashiro came to him and told him that she'd seen Jin and Misaki flirting with each other. Surprised, he asked her to lead the way, and when they got there, they were surprised to find Misaki spying on Jin. It turned out that the person Mashiro had seen with Jin was his ex-girlfriend Fuka, who was also Misaki's older sister. Fuka wanted to get back with Jin, but he turned her down, so she asked if it had anything to do with his going to school in Osaka. Hearing this, Misaki ran off, so Mashiro and Sarada went looking for her. When they found her, Sarada asked if she was feeling okay. She admitted that she was glad that Jin had rejected her sister and added that she'd already spoken to Jin about his school of choice, which surprised Sarada. When she left, Sarada returned to the prep room and after going through the workings of their show, he figured out the issue and immediately called an emergency meeting. He explained to the group what he felt the scene needed and how he hoped to execute it, and everyone agreed that his idea was good. Following this, they all got to work implementing the concept and didn't finish until late at night when they went to bed. However, Sarada lay in bed unable to sleep, so when Mashiro texted asking to see him, he rushed out of his room without thinking. To his surprise, she was sitting outside his door and wanted to sleep in his room, so he let her in. As they lay together, Mashiro suddenly asked whether she'd also hurt him like she had hurt Rita, which made him think. However, he realized it was just his inferiority complex that clouded his judgment. When he finally decided to speak up, he realized that Mashiro had fallen asleep and decided to talk to her later. A few hours later, the group arrived at the school, and after setting up everything backstage, Misaki gathered everyone around for one final group chant. When it was time for the show to begin, Aoyama, dressed as a cat girl, took the stage and introduced the show to the audience. She also directed them to raise their glow sticks whenever a scene called for moving the characters. This part made the audience very excited, and they always did it with glee until it was time for the final move, which required them to shout their love. Everyone felt it was too embarrassing to do that, but Mashiro surprised everyone by standing up and loudly thanking them. Misaki immediately followed suit, asking Jin to like her instead of Fuka. Rita went next, asking Ryunosuke for his email address, and this seemed to encourage the audience, so everyone started screaming out their thoughts. They continued until the main character powered up on screen and defeated the evil villain, prompting the audience to erupt in cheers. With the show over, the gang went on stage for the final curtain, and the audience cheered them on for a job well done. Later on, as Jin and Misaki loaded up the car with the equipment, Jin brought up what she said in the hall and then gave her a necklace he'd been meaning to give to her for a while. When he tried to put it in her, the silly girl nearly choked because she noticed Mashiro getting into a car with Rita. At that time, Aoyama went to tell Sarada that she couldn't find Mashiro and Rita anywhere. He immediately deduced they had gone to the airport, and when Aoyama asked why he wasn't trying to pull off the cliché airport scene, he told her there wasn't any point. His words annoyed Aoyama, so she grabbed him by the collar and began throwing shades at his so-called man ego. Sarada argued that he was only respecting Mashiro's wishes, even though he didn't want her to leave, so Aoyama told him to get it together and go beg Mashiro to stay. They then split up, looking for Mashiro, believing she was still at school, but Misaki arrived in her car to pick them up, explaining that she'd left for the airport. When they arrived at the airport, Sarada rushed to Mashiro, and after hugging her, he pleaded with her not to leave. He was so vocal that those around him started clapping and cheering him on, but he felt embarrassed because Mashiro told him that Rita was the only one leaving. Rita then teased him for taking the first step into Simfoot, but Sarada didn't appreciate it and complained that she deceived him from the start. Rita argued that it was his fault for believing her, and as she was speaking, the others arrived. To her surprise, Ryunosuke gave her a piece of paper with his email address, but said he wasn't interested in that brain-eating disease called love. In response to this, Rita suddenly kissed him on the cheek, shocking everyone before she left. As they stood outside watching her plane take off, everyone had a different reaction. But Sarada noticed that Mashiro was unusually quiet. When he asked why, she said it was because her heart had been pounding since he asked her not to leave, and when she asked if that was what love felt like, Sarada didn't know how to respond. However, he had a crazy dream about it, so during his lunch break the next day, he kept thinking about it. His thoughts were soon interrupted by Jin, who suddenly arrived and showed him the surveys from their show. The general feedback was positive, and Sarada was beyond happy to hear this. Jin then asked about his new game proposal, and Sarada told him he'd submitted it shortly after finishing work on their show. Just then, Aoyama and Mashiro arrived, and after Mashiro sat between the boys, Misaki suddenly showed up as well. As soon as Jin saw her, he pretended to be asleep, so the crazy girl tried to kiss him awake like he was Sleeping Beauty, but he stopped her. Since her plan was foiled, she presented him with the lunch she'd made for him, and when he opened it, everyone was surprised to see how she'd arranged it. However, Mashiro kept staring at it for some odd reason. Later in the day, during their physical education class, Aoyama's friend suddenly advised her to confess her feelings to Sarada, but Aoyama didn't know what to say. After school, she ran into Jin, who was standing in front of his locker holding a love letter. When he opened it, they discovered it was actually a marriage registration form from Misaki. Aoyama immediately congratulated Jin on his unexpected marriage, and he told her she wasn't funny. He then handed her 2 tickets to a Christmas play and told her to use them to her advantage. That evening, Mashiro came into Sarada's room while he was changing, and since he knew she didn't come to stare at his painted-on abs, he asked what she wanted. She said she wanted him to teach her how to make a bento, and then dragged him to the kitchen before he could refuse. A few minutes into the lesson, Mashiro cut herself, so he took her to Chihiro to get looked at. Chihiro still made sure to smack him on the head for being stupid enough to let Mashiro handle a knife. Because of that, when Chihiro left, he told Mashiro to forget about cooking and focus on her manga instead, so the girl returned to her room. An hour or so later, he saw Ayano leaving the dorm, so he approached her and the two went to a restaurant to talk. While there, Ayano told him that Mashiro had changed a lot in the past few months. Sarada agreed and pointed out how weird it was that she wanted to cook, given that in the past, all she cared about was her manga. Ayano then asked which version of Mashiro he preferred, causing his cheeks to heat up before he admitted that he liked the old Mashiro. When he returned home that night, he found a letter from the gaming company waiting for him. But after reading it, his excitement died down. Just as he crumbled up the letter, he noticed Mashiro watching him, so he asked why she was there in an apron instead of working on her manga. Mashiro answered that she had finished her work, but he started scolding her, calling her a slacker. According to him, she was supposed to have started another drawing instead of trying out new things like a wannabe TikTok influencer. To his surprise, Mashiro told him that if he wanted her to focus, he should stop popping up in her head now and then to distract her. Since he didn't know how to respond, he went to his room, and that was when he remembered he'd forgotten to give her the invitation to the end-of-year party Ayano had asked him to give her. Before he could decide whether to go and give it to her or not, Misaki came down her makeshift elevator dressed as Naughty Santa. When Sarada asked what she wanted, she asked him to come up to her room as she had something to discuss with him. On his way there, he ran into Aoyama and pleaded with her to go with him to see their resident nutjob, so she did. To their surprise, Misaki didn't pull any tricks and asked them not to be in the dorm on Christmas Eve. She said she wanted to confess her feelings to him for the last time since he'd brushed off all her previous confessions. The pair agreed to her request, and after they left her room, Aoyama invited Sarada to the Christmas play. Sarada agreed, saying he would meet her after dropping Mashiro off at her Christmas party. Days later, Mashiro tried to patch things up with Sarada by offering him her favorite bun, but he scolded her again. After she ran off, Jin came out of his room and told Sarada that he had acted like a world-class jerk. The following day, when Sarada opened his door, he found another bun from Mashiro waiting for him. Chihiro also happened to show up at that time, so she advised Sarada to speak to Mashiro rather than treating her as if she didn't exist. Feeling guilty, Sarada tried to ask for more advice, but the woman had already started walking away. She only stopped for a moment to tell him that they were all expected to leave the dorm for the holiday. A few days later, it was Christmas Eve, and as Sarada got ready to take Mashiro to her party, another letter arrived for him. But instead of opening it, he stuffed it into his pocket. When they arrived at the publishing house, Mashiro tried to speak with him, but Sarada didn't give her the chance and left her with Ayano. A little while later, he met with Oyama by a fountain in the park, and after getting over the shock of seeing her all dressed up, the two proceeded to the theater for the Christmas play. When the play concluded, they decided to take a stroll around, and as they walked, Oyama told Sarada that she had an audition on Valentine's Day. Sarada was happy to hear this, and just as he wished her good luck, she informed him that her father had instructed her to return home if she failed. It was apparent she didn't like these chances, but she chose to put on a brave front and told Sarada that once she passed the audition, she would tell him something. Just then, Ayano called Sarada to inform him that Mashiro had gone missing, so Sarada rushed off to find her. A little while later, Sarada located Mashiro in the park, and when he asked why she'd left the party, Mashiro told him it was because she'd wanted him to taste a dessert. Seeing that she was holding a plate, Sarada began scolding her for what he considered a stupid decision. Mashiro argued that she hadn't done anything wrong and explained that she'd only wanted to cheer him up because he seemed sad and angry. Hearing this, Sarada realized that he was behaving like a douchebag, so he took off his jacket and, after draping it on her shoulder, he took the dessert and ate it. When he finished it, he hugged her and pleaded with her never to go out without supervision again. He also promised to always be there for her and told her not to worry about anything other than her manga. Just then, Oyama, who had been silently observing them, finally approached them and handed Sarada's letter, which he dropped when he ran off. After taking it, Sarada decided to open it and was happy to see that he'd moved on to the next stage. When they returned to the dorm later that night, they found Misaki crying, and she told them that Jin had rejected her despite all her efforts. The following day, during breakfast, Chihiro told them that they had to be out of the dorm by the end of the day. However, none of the girls had made plans for the holiday, as two had forgotten entirely, and the other had been too busy trying to bag a playboy. So Chihiro asked Sarada to take them home with him. When they arrived at his family home later that day, the ever-dramatic Yuko accused him of starting a harem. After they all settled down, Sarada called Jin to ask what had happened between him and Misaki the day before. Jin explained that he pulled an Uno reverse by confessing to Misaki. However, he told her he wasn't ready for a relationship and asked her to wait until he became a man worthy of her love. He then requested Sarada to look after Misaki for him, as he would be living with Tadabayashi for the time being. Later on, after dinner, Yuko went to speak to Sarada about the entrance exam, saying that their father didn't want her to take it. Just as she pleaded with him to talk to the annoying old fart, the man walked in and told Yuko that she would only take the exams over his dead body. The following day, Sarada did a mock presentation for his mother and the girls, and after they gave him their feedback, he returned to working on his proposal. While he did that, Mashiro talked to Misaki and tried to understand the relationship with Jin. Misaki admitted to her that she wanted to date Jin, but felt like her work as an anime producer was driving a wedge between them. This prompted Mashiro to ask whether Jin didn't like her making anime, and Misaki didn't know how to answer. A few hours later, it was time for dinner, but Yuko was fast asleep from studying, so her mother told Sarada to speak to their father again about letting Yuko take the exams. Following this, Sarada went to take a bath, and as he pondered how to bring up the issue with his father, the man walked in. Sarada's first thought was to flee, but when he remembered that Yuko was counting on him, he stayed where he was and talked to him. Ultimately, he convinced his father to change his mind and promised that if Yuko failed the exams, he would ensure she enrolled at another school. On New Year's Eve, Sarada's mother drove them to the mountains to watch the sunrise. As they did this, Yuko thanked Sarada for speaking to their father, and then Misaki announced that she would keep making manga. This motivated the others also to scream out their wishes, and a few days later, Sarada's mother dropped them off at the train station so they could return to their dorm. Shortly after they returned, Sarada reviewed his presentation to ensure everything was in order. At that time, Aoyama went to Misaki's room to check on her and saw that the crazy girl was on a caffeine high. After checking her work, Aoyama asked if she could use it for her audition, and Misaki gave her the go-ahead. The following day, the girls wished Sarada good luck as his presentation was scheduled for after school, and he assured them he wouldn't fail. Later at school, he caught Misaki spying on Jin, who was with Tadabayashi, so he encouraged her to approach Jin and talk to him. When she refused, he walked up to Jin himself and asked when he intended to return to the dorm. Jin said it would be after his exams, prompting Tadabayashi to complain, since he was already tired of the freeloader. Just then, Sori joined them, and almost immediately, Tadabayata went red in the face, so Jin teased them, However, he admitted that he was a little jealous of their relationship. He then took his leave, so Sarada returned to Misaki, and as they walked, she told him she would do her best, then ran off like the loony she was. Following this, Sarada left for his presentation and did much better than last time. After his presentation, he was informed that he would be paired with Kazuki, and this made him extremely happy. As soon as he left the place, he texted his friends to share the good news, and they threw him a celebratory dinner that night. After dinner, Sarada kept his promise and went to help Aoyama practice her lines, but when they got to the part where the characters had to confess their feelings, they got very flustered. During that time, Mashiro just observed the two and couldn't help but feel jealous. So the next day she told Ayano she had bought books to help her better understand love. A few days later, Aoyama's friends tried to convince her to confess to Sarada, but she refused, saying it would harm their relationship. However, each time he helped her practice her lines, she couldn't help but consider confessing to him for real. Valentine's week soon came around, and Yuko arrived to stay in the dorm with them until she wrote her entrance exam. As usual, the girl went on about Sarada and his girls, starting with Aoyama during dinner, but Sarada assured her that they weren't an item. When Mashiro came to ask him to blow her hair, Yuko started talking nonsense again because Mashiro was only wearing a towel. As far as she was concerned, he was secretly clapping Mashiro, and no matter what Sarada said, she refused to change her opinion. The next day, however, she gave Sarada a box of chocolate, and as she was leaving to write her exams, she advised him to pick between Mashiro and Aoyama. The next day, being Valentine's Day, Sarada wished Aoyama good luck as she left the dorm early to prepare for her audition. A little while later, Mashiro came downstairs completely dressed, and Sarada was lost for words, as he hadn't expected to ever see her like that. However, he realized that it was too good to be true when he noticed that she'd forgotten to put on her socks. He then tried to check her bag to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything, but Mashiro refused, saying she had something important inside. Later at school, while class was going on, Mashiro texted Sarada, asking him to meet her on the roof after school. As soon as he finished reading the text, he deduced that she wanted to give him chocolates. After school, Sarada couldn't see Aoyama off because he was on cleaning duty, and on his way, he ran into Misaki and Sori. Misaki had some chocolates with her, so he knew they were for Jin, and wished her luck before walking away. He hadn't gone very far when he remembered that he was supposed to meet Mashiro on the roof, so he tried to rush back inside. Just then, Aoyama called him to tell him she was running late because the trains had stopped running due to an accident. He then told her to wait outside the station for him, and as he rushed to the gate, he left a voice message for Mashiro, asking her to stay in the class instead of on the roof because he would be late. As luck would have it, he ran into Miyahara at the gate, and after he told him what happened, the boy asked him to climb onto the back of his bike. Miyahara then sped off towards the train station, but since cardio wasn't his thing, he gave up along the way and left Sarada to finish the job. When Sarada arrived at the station, he asked Aoyama to hop on the bike behind him, and as they rode to the venue, Aoyama confessed to Sarada. However, she claimed she'd been doing last-minute rehearsals. Once rushed off, Sarada returned to school to find Mashiro still on the roof, which surprised him. After he apologized for being late, Mashiro handed him a box of chocolates, and he admitted that he'd been looking forward to it since he got her text. She then asked him to hold hands as they walked home, but changed her mind the next second. When Sarada asked why, she explained that her heart was galloping faster than a horse. Hearing this, he admitted that his heart was doing the same and then grabbed her hand. Days later, Sarada met with Kazuki to discuss his game proposal, and as they went through it, Kazuki suggested that Sarada speak to Mashiro and get her to make more drawings for him. After the meeting, Sarada returned to the dorm, and when he saw Aoyama, she asked if she could accompany him to check Yuko's exam result. Sarada was grateful for the company, and since Mashiro was a stage 5 clinger, she asked to join them. On their way to school, Sarada spoke to Mashiro about drawing more pictures for his game, and the girl happily agreed. By the time they arrived at the school, the place was crowded, so Sarada pushed his way through to find Yuko's exam number. Unfortunately, he couldn't find it, so he called her to share the sad news, which left her very disappointed. Since he wasn't good with the emotional stuff, he quickly hung up the call, but before he could leave with the girls, Tadabayashi and Sori approached them. As they talked, Tadabayashi informed Sarada that Jin was accepted into the university in Osaka. However, he planned to leave without saying goodbye to Misaki. When he mentioned that he was at school finalizing things with their teacher, Sarada asked Aoyama to return to the dorm to get Misaki while he and Mashiro went to stall Jin. When they found Jin, Sarada suggested that they go to the roof to talk. Once they got there, Sarada began trying to convince Jin to speak with Misaki before he left, but the guy acted like he didn't know what he was talking about. His behavior annoyed Sarada, so he gave him a knuckle sandwich to try and jog his supposedly unclear memory. Of course, Jin refused to sit back and take the beating, so he retaliated, using Sarada as a punching bag. He said a bunch of things while punching him, including the fact that just like Central C, he had commitment issues. After he pulled away, Sarada informed him that Misaki was on her way, but Jin assured him that the garden gnome would be a no-show. He knew this because he'd been trying to reach out to her for days, and she had ignored him. At that time, Aoyama arrived at the dorm and rushed to tell Misaki what was happening. But just as Jin had predicted, she refused to go with her. When Aoyama questioned her reason, she told her about when they were younger and Jin used to follow her around like a lost puppy. During that time, he fell for her, but she was too dense to recognize those feelings. Fuka then took advantage of his hurt, and after becoming the shoulder to cry on, they started dating. Ultimately, he ended things with Fuka because he still had feelings for Misaki, but he still refused to date her because he wasn't yet ready. When she finished her story, Aoyama told her that she would regret it if she didn't speak to Jin before he left, and when she realized that Misaki wasn't going to listen to her, she grabbed her and jumped out of the window. A little while later, they arrived at the rooftop, but since some teachers had followed them, Sarada, Mashiro, and Aoyama used their bodies to hold the door shut. During that time, Jin and Misaki talked, and Jin admitted that he'd chosen to go to Osaka so he could become a writer worthy of standing by her side. He also gave her a promise ring, but before things could get very emotional, the teachers forced their way onto the roof. They then asked the group to go downstairs, but once they had passed through the door, Jin locked the teachers on the roof. When they returned to the dorm later, Chihiro informed them that the school board had decided to tear down the dorm at the end of the school year. Following her announcement, they held a dorm meeting, and Chihiro revealed that they had been sent home for the holidays because a professional contractor had been brought to inspect the place. The contractor advised that the dorm be torn down because the building was an ancient relic. She then advised them to be prepared to move, and after she walked away, Sarada told the others that they couldn't accept the board's decision with open arms. Jin and Ryunosuke had to remind him that they were merely students and, as such, nothing they said or did could reverse the board's decision. Seeing as they were right, he retired to his room, and when Mashiro came to see him, he promised to continue looking out for her no matter where she ended up. While they were still talking, one of the cats began tapping on something, so Mashiro retrieved it and saw that it was an old photograph. Sarada revealed that the photo had been taken shortly after he moved to Sakura-su and decided to share his backstory with her. He said that on the day he moved in, he was almost scared to death by Misaki, who was lounging in his wardrobe, when she accused him of being a thief. Sarada explained that he was the new resident. Their voices had attracted Chihiro, but the woman didn't stick around to find out what had happened because she was rushing to a party. When Jin came out, he welcomed Sarada and, after making his introduction, left. Misaki then forced Sarada to play video games with her, but she overstayed her welcome, so Sarada decided to sleep in the dining room. On his way there, Ryunosuke suddenly appeared, shocking him out of his wits. After he disappeared into his room, almost the same way he appeared, Sarada started wondering if he'd moved into a haunted house. Just then, Chihiro came to check on him and explained that Ryunosuke wasn't a ghost but a fellow resident. She told him he'd witnessed a rare sighting, since Ryunosuke never left his room, and then gave him Ryunosuke's email address in case he wanted to communicate with him. When Ryunosuke returned to his room later, Misaki was already gone, but since she was a pest, she showed up a few moments later. Tired of her disturbance, he decided to go to the park, and while he was there, he found another stray cat, which he brought back to the dorm with him. While trying to sneak into the dorm, he got caught by Jin, who told him it was okay for him to take the cat in. They then walked to his room, and when they opened the door, Sarada got a face full of confetti because Misaki wanted to throw him a welcome party. The following day, they posed for the picture Mashiro had found, and since Ryunosuke had been a no-show, Misaki photoshopped him into it. When Sarada finished his tale, he and Mashiro went to eat, and while they were there, the others came to join them. It turned out that all of them, including Ryunosuke, were worried about the dorm, so they agreed to work together to save it. The first step they took was to try gathering enough signatures to prevent the demolition, but the only person who signed their petition was Miyahara. During their lunch break, the group gathered to discuss their lack of progress, and when Ryunosuke arrived, he handed them the board meeting minutes. Sarada and Aoyama were surprised to learn that he'd hacked into the school's files to get them, but Ryunosuke assured them that his hacking was the least of their problems. When they read the rough minutes, they discovered that the contractor had advised demolishing the dorm within the next 5 years. However, the higher-ups had decided to fast-track the demolition because they didn't want Mashiro to continue living in Sakura-su. According to Ryunosuke, the board believed that Mashiro had given up painting because the dorm's residents influenced her. After hearing this, Sarada angrily stormed out, saying he would confront those stuffy old farts, but Ryunosuke and Aoyama went after him. Ryunosuke told him not to be rash and reminded him that they weren't supposed to even know what was discussed at the meeting. When he pointed out that there was only one solution, Sarada refused, saying he wouldn't send Mashiro away. At that moment, Mashiro approached them to ask how many signatures she needed, and after Sarada explained that the book had to be filled, she left, promising to get it done once she was out of earshot. Ryunosuke resumed what he was saying and told Sarada that sending Mashiro away was their only option. Sarada still refused to agree to his suggestion, and this pissed Ryunosuke off, so he lashed out. He reminded Sarada that Jin and Misaki were about to graduate and that Aoyama was bound to leave the dorm once her audition results came out. Whether she passed or not, His words cut deep, but Ryunosuke didn't care and advised them to make memories while they still could, rather than spend their last days collecting signatures. Meanwhile, Rita, who had heard about the situation from Mashiro, sent a message to Ryunosuke, but Maid-chan, his virtual assistant, told her that he was busy. Out of curiosity, Rita asked Maid-chan if she knew why Ryunosuke acted the way he did, since she didn't want to get in trouble. The gossiping maid pretended to malfunction and began to recap Ryunosuke's past. According to her, Ryunosuke used to have some friends with whom he decided to create a game. Things had gone well at first, but problems arose when Ryunosuke began snapping at them and complaining about every single mistake they made. The unofficial Vegapunk satellite hadn't understood why they couldn't solve simple issues, and because of his behavior, the others began to pull away, eventually going their separate ways. That evening, when Oyama and Sarada returned to the dorm, they were greeted by Mashiro, who gave Oyama a letter which had arrived for her. The letter was the result of her audition, and after reading it, she informed her friends that she had failed. When Sarada tried to comfort her, she assured him that she was fine and promised to continue helping them with their mission to save the dorm until it was time for her to leave. Soon after she said this, Misaki came to them wearing a bear costume and told them that she wanted them to wear animal costumes when they went out to collect the next batch of signatures. In the end, she was the only one who wore the costume, and while she was harassing the students to sign the petition, Rita called Ryunosuke. She didn't beat around the bush and told him not to let his pride and brains destroy the only friendship that he had. Following this conversation, Ryunosuke decided to do something, so the next day, the others learned that he posted about their issue on the school's online bulletin board. He also left a petition book in the computer room so that anyone who saw his post would sign it, and when his friends found it, they rushed to thank him. With their motivation restored, they doubled their efforts to get all the signatures needed for their petition. One afternoon during an exam, Sarada noticed that Oyama was crying. Their classmates and teacher also noticed this and became worried, so Sarada volunteered to take her to the infirmary, believing she was probably not feeling well. When they got there, Oyama assured him that she was fine, but since he was worried, he asked her to call him if something went wrong. As he made his way back to class, he received a call from Kazuki, who informed him that his proposal didn't pass the third stage. Sarada thanked him for all he taught him in their short time together and asked for his honest opinion on his game. Kazuki told him that his game had a lot of potential and said that if it had been selected, he would have enjoyed developing it with him. After he finished speaking and hung up, Sarada crumbled to the floor in sadness. Just as he began swimming deeper into his pool of depression, he got a text from Ryunosuke asking how Oyama was doing. Sarada replied that she was doing okay, but Ryunosuke immediately texted back, asking whether his stupidity was a natural trait or something he had acquired along the way. He then pointed out that there was no way a person who had spontaneously burst into tears would truly be fine. Realizing his mistake, Sarada ran back to the infirmary, only to discover that Oyama wasn't there. Immediately, he began searching for her like she was the One Piece and was surprised when he spotted her standing outside in the rain. When he got to her, he asked why she had lied to him, and she admitted it was because she didn't want him to see her being weak. Hearing how broken she sounded, Sarada tried to comfort her, but Oyama refused to listen. When he realized that she was spiraling into self-doubt, he shook her and told her that she could confide in him. As soon as he promised that he would listen to everything she had to say, Oyama broke down in tears. She also began talking and told him that she believed she had wasted her life chasing a dream which now seemed pointless. After listening to all she had to say, Sarada comforted her and assured her that her dream wasn't meaningless. Once she was calm enough, he took her back to the infirmary, where she changed into her tracksuit before Chihiro arrived to check on her. The woman gave her some medicine and left after instructing her to rest until school was over for the day, not wanting to be alone. Oyama pleaded with Sarada to stay with her until she fell asleep. Sarada agreed, and as he lay on the bed next to hers, he told her that his proposal had been rejected. Speaking further, he admitted that he was sad about it, but said he wouldn't let that stop him from pursuing his dream. He soon fell asleep, and when he woke up later, it was dark outside, making him realize that he'd missed the petition signing. Immediately, he rushed outside to join the others and asked why they hadn't come to wake him up. They told him it was because they didn't want Oyama to be left alone and assured him that he didn't need to feel bad about not helping. When they returned to the dorm later, he found a letter from the gaming company which was addressed to Mashiro. They wanted her to help them with their character designs after seeing the drawings she made for his proposal, and this kissed Sarada off. He began complaining about how things never worked out in his favor, and mid-rant, he switched to the dorm situation. Mashiro then revealed that she knew the dorm was going to be torn down because of her, and then walked away before he could say anything. The following day was graduation day, and while everyone went to the dining room for breakfast, Sarada went to wake Mashiro. However, she didn't answer, so he went in to check if she was okay and found she wasn't in the room. Thinking she went to get something, he searched for her, and when he didn't find her, he told the others she was missing. Just then, Shichiro spoke up from her spot by the door, saying that Mashiro had packed her bag and left that morning. Sarada asked why she hadn't tried to stop her, and Shichiro answered that Mashiro had already made up her mind to go. As Sarada struggled to digest this, Ryunosuke announced that Mashiro was at school after having tracked her location. Immediately, they all loaded into Misaki's car, and she drove them to school as fast as she could. When they arrived, they followed the signal to the art room, but Mashiro was not there, even though her belongings were there. The painting she'd been working on was also there, and the group was amazed to see it was of them at Sakura-su. However, Mashiro wasn't in it. This made them realize that she'd been aware of the situation from the start and had already planned to leave if their petition fell through. Sarada was very angry at this, but Jin told him that it wasn't over yet, so they agreed to split up and look for Mashiro. Sarada and Oyama immediately headed for the train station, but Oyama decided to check the convenience stores in case she had stopped by there. As Sarada continued running, she called out to him to cash in his promise to listen to her after she got her audition result. Curious, Sarada asked what she wanted to discuss, and she told him she was glad they had met. According to her, he was her inspiration to work harder, and she couldn't thank him enough for helping her build her courage. When she was done being emotional, she told him to tell Mashiro how he truly felt when he found her. Sarada then continued to the train station, and when he arrived, he was relieved to see Mashiro on the other side of the tracks. Since he was impatient, he called out her name and asked why she had left. Even though he already knew why, Mashiro told him what they had already figured out at school, but added that the main reason was that she didn't want him to hate her. Hearing this, Sarada apologized for what he had said the night before out of jealousy, adding that she was his inspiration to do better. He didn't stop there and went on to tell her how much he loved her. But the train pulled up at that moment, interrupting the mood. When it finally pulled out of the station, he saw that Mashiro was no longer on the other side, so he assumed she'd gotten on the train. Just as he was about to give in to sadness, Mashiro called out to him from the stairs, and he realized that she'd come to him. She told him that she didn't want to leave, but kept blaming herself for what was happening to the dorm. At that moment, Oyama made her presence known and told Mashiro to stop blaming herself for things beyond her control. She then hugged her and said that none of them accused her because she was one of them, and the dorm wouldn't be the same without her. The emotional moment was soon interrupted when Ryunosuke and Rita arrived and told them that the graduation ceremony was about to begin. Immediately, they ran back to school so they wouldn't miss the ceremony. Along the way, Rita gave them some Sakura pins, and Ryunosuke explained that the student council had distributed them. When they finally arrived at school, they were happy to see that the ceremony hadn't started yet, but Ryunosuke stopped on the stairs because he was tired. Seeing this, Rita decided to hang back with him while Sarada, Mashiro, and Oyama went into the gym for the ceremony. It kicked off with the opening speech before Misaki was called up to give the valedictorian speech. This came as a surprise to the teachers because they knew for sure that the girl and academics were 2 words apart. When she got on stage, she began her speech by saying that the last 3 years she spent at the school had been the best of her life. She said that if it hadn't been for her teacher, who encouraged her to take the entrance exams, she never would have considered attending the school. Seeing as she was feeling nostalgic, she began talking about her experience in Sakura-Su. She had been the first one to be sentenced to the so-called delinquent house, and every day she prayed that the rooms would be filled with people she could call friends. Her prayers were eventually answered, and after she recounted all the good and bad days they had, she began thanking Sarada and the others. She addressed each one of them separately, thanking and encouraging them to be their best. Chihiro wasn't left out, and when she finished, she implored the student body to stand against the injustice the school board was trying to inflict on Sakura-su. Realizing that a revolution was upon them, the principal instructed them to ignore her claims and demanded that Misaki leave the stage. When he kept insisting that her words were a lie, Jin spoke up, saying that they weren't. He also reminded him that he'd accepted the speech when Teibayashi handed it to him earlier, so he was being a hypocrite. Jin's words made the man realize he'd been tricked, so his anger rose, and he ordered the teachers to take Misaki off the stage. Just as they were about to do so, Mashiro, Sarada, and Oyama started shouting about how much they loved Sakura-su. Seeing how brave they were in the face of oppression, the other students began demanding that the school reverse their decision. When their voices grew louder, Ryunosuke walked in and told the principal that he'd been beaten. Teibayashi then added that it would be in his best interest to agree to the students' demand, but the man still refused. Seeing this, Chihiro took to the stage and asked the students to vote for or against demolishing Sakura-su. Misaki was the first to vote against it by raising her pin, and when the others saw it, they all followed suit. She then asked them to toss the pins into the air, and after they did, she and her friends, including Chihiro, were kicked out of the gym. Despite this, the group remained in high spirits because they knew they had achieved their goal and spent the rest of their time in exile having fun. The following day, after Sarada fixed the sign outside the dorm again, Oyama came to inform him that she had finished packing her things. It turned out that the night before, she'd made up her mind to continue pursuing her voice acting career with or without the support of her parents. However, Chihiro had advised her against doing so, saying that things would be much easier if she convinced her parents to get on the same page as her. Seeing the wisdom in the woman's words, Oyama decided to return home and talk with her parents. Back in the present, Misaki pulled up in her car, so everyone got out of the dorm and into the car because they had places to be. Their first stop was the airport because Ryuta had a flight to catch, but the sneaky girl made sure to steal a kiss from Ryunosuke before running off. After leaving the airport, they went to the train station to drop off Jin and Oyama, who were going to Osaka. While saying goodbye to Misaki, Jin kissed her and gave her the marriage registration form she'd slipped in his locker a while back, asking her to hold on to it until he graduated to make it official. As they got caught up in their own world, Oyama said her goodbyes to the others and promised to return with good news. After their train departed and Misaki drove off, Sarada stood with Ryunosuke and asked if he could develop a game on his own, and Ryunosuke answered that he could. This encouraged Sarada, so he told Ryunosuke he was willing to take the bold step of creating something he loved. But when Ryunosuke started getting all sentimental, he made up an excuse to leave. Sarada then turned his attention to Mashiro, who was staring at a cherry blossom tree and was instantly reminded of the day they met. A little while later, they returned to the dorm, and Mashiro tried to hang up her painting. Unfortunately, she fell, so Sarada rushed to check on her and was relieved when he saw that she was unhurt. When he looked at the painting, he noticed that she'd included herself in it and became happy. However, the girl decided to shock him by asking for a kiss. Although her reason was purely out of curiosity because the others had done it, Sarada hesitated. When he finally decided to do it, one of the cats attached itself to his face. By the time he pulled it off, Mashiro had lost interest, but still kissed him on the cheek so he wouldn't sulk like a loser. Weeks later, the new semester began, and 2 students, Kana and Lori, moved into Sakura-su. However, the first impression Sarada and Ryunosuke gave them scared them for life. While trying to hide from them, Lori went into Mashiro's room, and when she asked him to take off his clothes, he did so without asking questions. Thankfully, Oyama arrived and stopped him before he could catch a case. That night, they held a welcome party, and Sarada was surprised to see a second female student, who turned out to be Yuko. When he asked how she'd pulled it off, she admitted that she had given him the wrong exam number on the day he went to check the results. Just then, Mashiro walked into the room with her painting, but someone rang the doorbell at that moment, so Sarada went to see who it was. To his surprise, he found it was Misaki, who revealed that she was their new neighbor and Jin's wife because she had submitted the marriage registration form. When she went to join the others in the dining room, Sarada began reflecting on how much his life had changed in the past year. Do you think the new year would be as crazy as the last? And would Sarada finally ask Mashiro out? If you watched this video to this point, let us know who your favorite Sakura-su girl is. Also, check out this next video.